Hi, and welcome back to Thone's 1 Peter Nibbles number 3. Greeting to the elect pilgrims, part 3 of 9. Peter's letter recipients. And again, this comes from 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 1 and 2. And we're going to be talking about the audience, the recipients of these letters, who was reading these letters. Why is this in the Bible? Knowing to whom it was intended will help us understand the emphasis of some of the upcoming more difficult interpretations. This is a difficult section in some senses. Some of the things that follow here. Communication. This reaches the primary Jewish audience, connecting their understanding of Old Testament thought to their new understanding of the doctrines of Jesus. The application to me. This epistle was written to the believers in several cities in the region commonly known today as Asia Minor, or Turkey. These are some of the primary regions where the dispersed churches of Judah had retreated after the great attacks upon them by the Romans and the Jews. Also, some of the residents left in Babylon had been moved about 200 years before by the Syrian king, who were transported to this area. We may assume that these believers were primarily Jewish in their origin. Of course, there was also likely Gentile converts in these regions as well. These were now to consider themselves as not only strangers from the immediate earthly homeland, this was not where they were born or where their family was born, but now as residents of heaven and not of earth. Now, a couple of heavy things there. First of all, I want to point out that the statement that I make here, we may assume these believers were primarily Jewish in their origin. Of course, they were also likely Gentile converts. That is a point of disputation between several of the commentators on this section. Some say they absolutely were all Jews. Some say that they were really not Jews. The great bulk of the thought about this is that the majority would be Jews because the book is written in some of the later sections that we're going to be reading with a great deal of understanding of Hebrew Scripture necessary to interpret them properly. So that would indicate that it was being aimed at people who had that background. However, we do know in the travels of Paul, another apostle, that there were pockets of belief that were in this area that were not Jewish in origin. I think the writer of Luke, Dr. Luke, was clearly Greek in his origin, and yet he wrote the book of the Gospel of Luke and also the Acts of the Apostles. So we can't say that everybody here was Jewish, but because there were some key figures that were not. However, for the most part, we can pretty well assume that they were Jewish because of the viewpoint which Peter takes here in his writing in some of the later things that we'll be reading. Now, God leads us with understanding the whole, not the technical points. And my response is, Lord, thank you for this new focus. You're focusing on the whole, and that's going to be important in the next few things that we're going to, after tomorrow, really, the next 3 sections are going to be 3 different interpretations of the Bible here, and how they have become 3 different kinds of denominations in Christianity. And we will, I'm going to try to, as fairly as possible, give you a brief summary of those. However, these are highly controversial grounds, and I want to be sure that you understand that I don't believe all of these. I believe that there is some good and some truth in all 3 viewpoints, but I am not going to say advocate anything except a kind of cold rendering of the facts, because it would not be good for me to, so to speak, preach something that I don't believe. Okay. And so this is a new focus that we're going to be going into. Talk to you next time.